Is it hard for you to talk about your sexual wants, needs, and desires? Well, you're not alone. It's hard for everybody, and that's no pun intended. Are you hard right now and can't talk about it? Well, if so, this podcast is for you. Hi, I'm Toby. I'm from the band Emery. I've also led a bunch of men's groups with the True Man Experience, and I'm working on this podcast with Dr. Stormy, who is an amazing sex coach who has helped so many people. And that's what we're here to do. We were here to open up the conversation. You need to be able to talk about your sexual desires, your wants, and yes, even your needs, and where you can take your sex life with your partner. So sit back, relax. We're taking listener questions. We're going to have a great episode. Join us because this is the sex education you always wish you would have gotten. All right, we're back with another episode, and this is the second part of a two-parter. If you haven't listened to the first part, it's all about role play, and we're giving you guys tips and benefits and stats. There's so much here going on with role play because, just like we said in the last episode, this really builds so much trust within your relationship. That's what I'm really recognizing from this, because going into this topic, I just thought funny, cut up, maybe, you dress as a fireman or she dresses as a maid or whatever it might be. But the idea here is to do that, you do have to be a little vulnerable, and you have to trust that the other person is going to be there with you and go there with you in the role play. Like, it's not just one actor and a person viewing. You should both be a part of this. Even if only one person is wearing a costume, you got to be in the role play there. So I think we're finding out a lot about trust here.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And I think it's funny. I think it does get this whole oh, it's either kitschy or it'll be a funny thing, but it really can be an incredible tool for, like we mentioned last episode, for communication, for trust, for sexiness, for playfulness, for so much more. So super excited to dive back in and give you some more tips to start tonight to make role play successful for you and your partner.
Yeah, we're going to get into it a little bit later. We'll have listener questions and a Stump Stormy. And so last week we found out that my home state, South Carolina, the most searched porn was GILF. So I might have some of those for Stump Stormy. I'll leave the Stump Stormy for a little bit. But yeah, let's get into it. We got some more steps and benefits here to take to get into this tonight, get into role play tonight. So let's get started.
Yes. Do it. So the other four benefits that I would suggest for you as to why you might want to consider, actually why you should consider having a conversation with your partner and maybe introducing role play into your sexual repertoire, is interestingly, this tip is, like trust, can be a little surprising. It is actually can be a really powerful healing tool. Role play can be. So we all have, in my other world of 14 years as a mental health occupational therapist, I dealt a lot with trauma, right? We say in the trauma world, we say capital T trauma or little t trauma. And trauma is a universal experience for all Americans, right? So it might be capital T trauma or little t trauma, but how it lodges in our nervous system is one and the same. And so people will say, well, I don't have any sexual trauma per se. I haven't been sexually assaulted, I haven't been raped, whatever it might be. But I would say for sure with my experience and with my clients, trauma shows up in our sexuality. It shows up in our ability to surrender, our ability to orgasm, our ability to trust, our ability to feel safe in our bodies. So trauma really does show up in the bedroom. And so role play can be a really healing thing. So let's say I don't feel confident because of something I maybe have gone through. Maybe it wasn't a capital T trauma. Maybe it was just I don't have really great body love or something like that. Well, if my role play is that I am a supermodel, because and my partner's yeah, it's super hot, I'm having sex with a supermodel, right? And that's the role play. I get to step into being more confident, feeling more powerful in my body, in that example. So it can be a really powerful healing tool.
Wow. I would never have put those together. I wouldn't even have thought about that, the actual healing nature. And once again, I think it probably dives into some of the trust there too, and just who you are. But that's really interesting that you could use it in a beneficial way to heal your mind and your heart a little bit. That's pretty
totally
cool.
Yeah. And that leads me right to the next step, which is that it's a really great tool to get to learn more about your partner, right? One of the things we always hear in long-term partnerships is, and it's a wives' tale, it's not true, but it's I already know everything about my partner. There's nothing new about my partner. Very different than the dating time when you're everything is new about your partner. But role play is a really beautiful first of all, I promise you don't know everything about your partner, right? Yeah. Thank gosh, we are really magical, complex, layered human beings. But it's a really great way to get to know your partner, to learn about each other. So you get to and I mentioned this in part one, but you get to start to understand each other's fantasies, right? So maybe in your mind, you might assume that your partner, let's just say that the naughty nurse is like a hot fantasy, but you're making an assumption, and you bring it up and your partner's like, no, actually, like, pretending that we're strangers who met at a bar would be really exciting or whatever. Like, you don't know. We make a lot of assumptions, particularly in the realm of fantasies. And so it gives you another tool to get to know your partner better.
Yeah. And all of this is, remember, it can be fun. It can even be serious. Like, I mean, like, I think the communication aspect here, like we were saying in the last episode, don't just jump out. No. And this week, for all you listeners out there, I didn't go buy an Aladdin costume. I didn't get that. But who knows? I'll probably get one sent in the mail before I get some weird stuff sent to me in the mail. And so I haven't tried that, but the idea of just having a conversation with your partner, which I did, I was like, oh, it's just be something to talk about. And I haven't acted on it. We haven't acted in none of that. But the idea here is it really did just open up kind of a fun conversation. That even the conversation was kind of sexy, and it just like I was like, oh wait, like you were saying earlier, like there's a lot of depth that this can take that is really beneficial and can be fun, can be serious, can be insightful, can help you feel a little free, can help you maybe feel better about your body. Maybe you look great in that thing you thought you weren't going to, or there's all kinds of things that you can recognize from that. So
so well said, right? And it's and that's kind of the next benefit. It also gives you like a gentle foray into kink, right? For many people, many couples, kink is like scary, and like they think of like 50 Shades of Grey and like the playroom and such like that. And it's actually a really gentle foray into kink, because so maybe you're not down for BDSM at the moment in your partnership, but you are open to like playing with the another common one is playing with the power dynamics, right? So maybe you're going to play the submissive, or maybe you're going to play the dominant without going into full kink world. It gives you a way to kind of start to play with some of the kinkiness that you might be sexually excited by.
Yeah. And it does turn people, and kink is hard. That's going to be one of the listener questions we talk about today. I can totally see that people are off put by it, and the idea seems like it's going to be intense. Yeah. Because a lot of what we've seen is either through porn or 50 Shades of Grey or something like that, where it's not going to be like that, really. I mean, maybe there's a small percentage that it will be something like that, but for the most part, it's going to be a lot slower, hopefully with communication and everything, just it doesn't have to be immediately intense where you're just, immediately all these different components of your costume and your role play. It can be one little thing, you don't have to start huge.
No, we said that last episode, right? Start small so that you start, right? Because if it seems so like elaborate or so daunting or so taboo, you're not going to start. So start small. And that's really like the perfect place to start. Yeah. And then the last benefit that to encourage you guys to try it is it gets you much more involved in your sex life, right? One of the things we hear about long-term partnerships is like the sex life gets monotonous. It gets, there's doldrums. It's the same person. Oh my gosh, I'm only going to have sex with the same person for the rest of my life, right? Like these are some of the negative sides, but you're putting intention and attention on your sex life when you explore role play together, because you got a plan. You also can and that's a kind of leads me to the tips, but you can also like get excited. Like let's say you've decided on a role play, you can like start taking on the role early in their day and send each other some sexy texts like in the role is a really great way to build it up. And you're more involved. You have more intention and attention. You're prioritizing your sex life, and that will always serve your partnership.
Yeah, 100%. At Marriage Supply, we've been creating some more custom boxes, and one of them was kind of like you get toys. We haven't put it out yet, but you get toys and then some date ideas. And one of the ideas was you and your partner drive separately to a restaurant on your first date, and you don't know each other, which ends up being one of the most role plays most is strangers, especially with millennials love it's just a stranger. You show up at a bar, you act like you don't know each other, or you're on a plane together and you pretend you don't know each other, and by the end of hey, would you like to come to my hotel? And then
totally.
Like that stranger role play is really popular, so there's some ideas there where you can try that, and it can be very fun.
And so what popped in my head is Modern Family. I don't know if you ever watched it, but they have these and they have they go out on date night and they pretend to be strangers and they have these whole alter egos, and it's very funny over the season. So good. But so that's to give you some more tips, our listeners, some more tips to take it to start tonight, right? To start role play tonight is we talked in the first 4 tips about creating safety in a non-judgmental zone, but this one's related in that consent, right? So by design, this is, you guys are assuming roles in an imaginary scenario, and that means that consent is important, which means you have to discuss, right? And the other thing is that around consent is that it can shift. It might be a yes until it's a no, right? So having kind of safe words for role play is a great idea. We've talked about this in other episodes. But also like knowing that like, maybe you're like, yeah, I'm open to that. Like, that sounds pretty hot. And then all of a sudden something happens and I'm like, oh, that does not feel hot to me. To be able to know I have the freedom, the safety, and the agreements in the partnership to say, you know what, it's actually like not turning me on. It's really like a no for me. So that, you know, our boundaries can shift, and being able to communicate our boundaries, but also to always be in full consent.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's a big one. That's a big one for that safety piece. And then the next tip we already kind of started talking about is like, people are like, I get this all the time. I'm like, well, I don't know where to start. I have no idea what role is exciting. So we gave last episode a couple tips. If you see something hot on TV or in the media, you could be like, hey, honey, like, what do you think about role playing that one out? You know, but also there's lists. You can literally Google role play in the bedroom and like, you know, list of roles. And there's so many of them. We talked about like the common ones, like, right. It gets all the like, think about all the like hot, slutty, sexy Halloween costumes, right? Like the naughty nurse, Pocahontas, right? Like there's a lot of like, you know, although hopefully no one's doing Pocahontas, so not politically correct anymore. But you know, there's like the French maid, right? Like these are all really common ones. The fireman, the FedEx delivery guy, these are like really common ones. And strangers, anything around a stranger. So that could be the FedEx delivery guy, that could be like the policeman or the fireman. But you don't know what your partner finds sexy or exciting or erotic until you ask them, until you start having playful, fun conversations about it.
Yeah, and always you should experiment. Don't stick with one. Just try some different stuff.
I was reading about the most common role plays, and I had to laugh, Toby, because one of them is rock star and groupie. It's one of the most common role plays. So I was like, I gotta tell Toby that's hilarious. So rockstar groupie could be your jam. Yeah. But and then another really common.
I don't bring my work home, Stormy. I don't bring my work home.
Good, smart man. But another really common one, we talked about this in part one, is that the playing with power dynamics. So if you tend to be the more submissive person in the partnership, maybe you role play as the more dominant. If you tend to be the more dominant, maybe you role play as the more submissive. It gives you a really great way to start to play with power dynamics in a really safe, you know, consenting way. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Awesome.
Yeah. And then the last 2 tips are kind of similar, but you know, you mentioned in the first part talking about like, you know, being willing to like try and being willing to encourage each other. So I call it like suspend your disbelief, right? Like your partner is probably not like a award-winning actor or actress, you know, and you probably are not either. Maybe you are, but giving grace, letting there be like laughter, not at, but with each other. And then being a little like suspend your disbelief. Like, you know, you got to like get into the role, like really let yourself be like, I'm having sex with a stranger, you know, like, and that, and if that is the turn on for you, if that is the erotic part for you. So suspending your disbelief and like letting it be playful is really a key.
Yeah. And then what was both of those are the same?
No, and then the last one is aftercare, which does come from like the kink world. I mentioned in a few other episodes, but you're trying something new on, right? You are both literally trying on roles. Maybe there's costumes, maybe there's not, maybe there's props, maybe there's not. But what do you do after the scene? Because this is for a certain period of time. Maybe it's a sexual interaction, maybe it's all day. I mean, whatever your agreements are, and then aftercare. So saying, how was that for you? What did you like? What did you not like? What will we do differently next time is a really key to having successful role play.
That makes so much sense. I mean, I think that's a big, even without role play, sex in general, communication, relationships in general. After something, you do something together, just talk about it a little bit. Say, hey, what did you like? What didn't you like? And then, I mean, it doesn't have to be a long drawn out conversation. It can be very quick and just so you're checking in with each other, because you never know. Somebody in the moment might have been doing something, and then they're like, hey, you know what? I'd like to try this differently next time. Or I loved this. Let's do this 5 more times or something, you know, something like that.
Totally. Right. And you also may like, it can be, I've worked with clients that like, we actually have like, I give them homework to have like a shedding of the role, right? To say like, okay, like Toby's back, right? Like, okay, like, right. And so like, hot fireman's gone for the day. Toby's back, right? Hot Toby's back, right? So and it's not about like being less than the role. It's literally about like letting go of the role. If that's an important part to aftercare, maybe you don't need that. But having that conversation of like what helps you feel grounded. The whole point is sexiness, connection, you know, playfulness. So was the goal obtained? And if not, what do you want to change?
And one last thing, after talking about this, because we even started this podcast episode about just how much trust this can build. I'll even say, because I've seen some, like, one of our listener question in a minute is going to be about some kink shaming. Make sure you don't shame someone for being just a little vulnerable with you. A lot of men I know have felt a lot of shame because they said, what if you tried on a schoolgirl outfit? Those men were fathers. They were not trying to do anything for the idea there was it took them back to maybe their most vibrant sexuality where they just had their hormones running through them. They had erections all the time. They were in high school. They're thinking about who they get to be, that teenage kid again. You know what I mean? Right. Like that boy again. And the idea there isn't like, oh, you would do that. It's not that. We don't want to shame people because they're being vulnerable. And they're saying, oh, I think this makes it seem like we're teenagers again and having sex for the first time, and you'll look hot. And those outfits are made to look hot. That I totally. Yeah. So they're, in fact, for me, I'd rather women wear schoolgirl outfits and never any little girls. I don't. Yeah, exactly. On my own, I would not want them wearing anything like that.
Totally.
So don't
that's a really good
build
point,
trust,
right? Yeah. Right. Don't kink shame, but also don't make assumptions about what's behind your partner's fantasy, right? Because to your point, you said was so well said. You're assuming that means they find school age girls sexually attractive. It's like it might bring them back. You said that so well to where they are, and they're like, my woman who's 46 or whatever she is looks super hot in the schoolgirl outfit, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean because I want her to be a schoolgirl, right? She's what it is that youthfulness, that vitality, like the knee-high stockings, right? And so really, and this is tough because we also fantasies can also put, we're going to get into this in the listener question in a minute, but they can put pressure on our own trauma response, right?
Yes.
But that again gives you such amazing conversation to have with your partner. Maybe they are super triggered by that because they had a traumatic experience as a school age girl. Like, amazing. Now you guys are talking about that and how sacred, how intimate, how powerful, right? Yeah. Rather than making assumptions or kink shaming.
All right. This has been great. Let's get to Stump Stormy and then listener questions. All right. Stump Stormy.
It's time to Stump Stormy.
I got a good one here for you. All right. Maybe not. You might, this one might be self-evident, but okay. This comes from, because last episode I looked up, because I was thinking with porn, that is where a lot of fantasy ideas come from, or people, what they search is what they are maybe wishing they could have in their own bedroom, or desiring, or maybe would want, or are turned on by. Same way, like the top ones were like French maid or strangers, firefighter, nurse, or student. The interesting one was a landlord, time to collect the rent, or even like trash collectors, like it's funny because they still stop by once a week. Like the milkman used to be the milkman would stop by and he's doing more than just delivering milk. And so now it's the trash collectors still come by every week, or like you said, the Amazon. So that's interesting. But so I was wondering, and so this is from Pornhub, but it reported what let's see, what type of porn was 151% more popular with women compared to men?
I would guess the whole like FedEx delivery guy or like the plumber or like, handyman coming over would be more popular with women.
Well, that's what I thought too, but it's actually lesbian porn. And lesbian porn is one of the most searched. Now, maybe that's part of because lesbians are looking for lesbian porn. So women are, in fact, looking for porn for themselves. But I thought that was interesting because I would have assumed men would have looked up lesbian porn more. You know what I mean? Like that, maybe that's even just cliche and what you've seen in movies and television. He's looking up two women kissing, or, guys in a derogatory way. It's been shown in film and TV. But I thought that was really interesting. 151%.
So interesting.
And you know that trans porn is up 75%. And which is so interesting, especially because that's in a lot of the Bible Belt states as well, that would be so harsh with their rules or their language against the trans community. So I think that what we do in private is so much different than what we portray in public. But and then it also said female viewers were 31% more likely to search for rough sex. And in Mexico, women were 95% more likely to view striptease content. I was like, wow, that is some interesting stats there. I wouldn't.
Yeah, it is. And it really does play into role play because, that's a common one, right? Like we talked about that, is the playing with the power dynamic. So maybe you're playing as the submissive, or maybe you're playing as the dominant. Maybe you're playing with rough sex. We also had an episode on intro to rough sex and how to make that safe and awesome. But, that doesn't surprise me that rough sex is searched, I think, because it's also often a place of fantasy for people. And so to your point of why you went to there to look at that for the Stump Stormies is it can show you where a lot of fantasies lie, Yeah,
100%. All right, let's get to listener questions.
Have a question? We've got answers. Here's this week's listener questions.
All right. This comes from, can I get a standing ovation? I mean, erection. I have performance anxiety. When my girlfriend and I have sex, I often lose my erection. I can usually regain it, but sometimes we just stop. I want to have great sex with her, but I feel like I'm not good at it.
Yeah. I mean, this question is really powerful, courageous question. It has two parts to it, right? The difficulty maintaining erection and also performance anxiety. So I want to make sure to address both parts to that question. So, the research, and we've talked about this in other episodes, that 50% of men 40 to 70-year-old and more after 70 years old will report challenges with erections at some point in their life. So it is so common. Okay. So
how old? What did you say? How old?
50% of men between 40 and 70.
Damn it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and then
demo. I've now arrived at the demo I did not want to arrive at.
Yeah.
Now I'm about to be able to use my senior citizen discount, and I'm also in the bad erection demo. So things are
no, it's not bad. It's common, right? Okay. So that was said like such a man right there, but so I wanted to normalize how common it is. Okay, so but things that can affect erections are things like stress, anxiety, depression. Right? There's so many medications that can affect the quality of your erection. It's interesting. Like depression can affect your erection, and so can some of the medications used to treat depression. So but so getting curious about how is your stress level? How are you feeling anxious? How's your mood? What kind of medicines are you on? But also just normalizing it. So if you're really concerned about your erection, pay attention, are you still having morning erections? Are you able to get erection during masturbation, and maybe not just in partnered sex all the time with your partner? Because then it's likely not a physical issue, more likely a psychological or, lifestyle stress or sleep or something related to that. So that's kind of on the erection piece. And as far as on the erection piece, I would also say, don't stop. Ray, you mentioned you just want to stop. So if you're in a sexual exchange with your partner and you're not able to maintain or have the erection that you want, maybe it's a weaker erection, don't stop, because men often report that they stop because they feel inadequate or something's wrong, or they're worried about hurting. They don't want their partner to take it personally. And the woman, and maybe in this situation, the woman might be like, oh, look what I can't even turn him on. Right. So now you're leaving a huge chasm where you guys are both going to make assumptions and probably going to be wrong, and where there's hurt and where there's, misinterpretation, rather than using it as a place to connect, a bridge to connect, to say, hey, my penis is not cooperating, but I am so turned on by you right now. And I would love to pleasure you. Or right. So there's so many other parts to foreplay. We have fingers and we have lips and we have tongues and we have toys. You have way more than your penis. We've talked about a lot of women don't even orgasm from penetration alone. So expand your definition of foreplay. Don't stop. Don't stop the sexual exchange just because your erection isn't where you want it to be.
Yeah. And remember, it's about the journey, not the destination. If you're if you think, I have to make her come, or, oh my God, I'm losing my erection. Because I've been there before. I promise you, so many times I've just gotten in my head and I'm like, why am I doing this? We're having a good time. And I'm trying to go, let's stop. My partner didn't want to stop. We can get this thing back up. And if we can't, we're still having fun. It doesn't, you know what I mean? If it doesn't, take that pressure off yourself. You cannot say, if I don't get to this destination with us sexually, if we don't come, if we don't ejaculate, whatever it is, then it wasn't good. That is not the case.
Right.
There's so many times where it's just so great. Just like we were talking in the last episode about making out. You might not even have penetrative sex or anything like that. You can just make out, and that is really fun. And your hands are touching each other. You're moving around. You can be turned on and not even try to, complete penetrative sex. You don't even have to do that. So make sure you don't put too much pressure on yourself in that way.
Totally. And that's the second part, right? He talked about performance anxiety, and 10 to 25% of men report performance anxiety. Women report it too, but that's for men, 10 to 25%. And so kind of similar on that, it's actually breathing, slowing it down, focusing on pleasure is actually how we work with performance anxiety. And we had an episode on men's sexual mastery. Like, check out that episode. There's a lot of tips to get you more connected to your body, more connected to your penis, more connected to your pleasure, and that will help with performance anxiety.
Yeah. All right. This next one's kind of a tougher one here. This from Keep It to Yourself. I approached my partner with something I wanted to try, and instead of exploring it, they kink shamed me. How do I recover from such a strong reaction? I'm now hesitant to bring it back up.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the kink shaming, right? That is really, any shaming is really challenging. And there's a saying in the kink world that I love, which is "don't yuck my yum." And right, so don't yuck my yum, meaning you might not like my kink or my fantasy or my fetish. You might be turned off. You might even find it like just like an absolute hard no for you, but you don't get to yuck it, right? If so long as you're not harming anyone else or yourself, or there's full consent if you are, because there's kink there too, that your fetishes, your kinks, your fantasies are welcome. They're normal, and so being shamed for them can be so hard, and it happens a lot, right? So the opposite of kink shaming would be being sex positive, right? And that is literally the focus of this podcast, right? Is to arm our listeners with sex education and to be sex positive and to feel like you have more tools to navigate sex and sexuality, and to have better relationships and have better sex because of that. So working on being sex positive. So, it's not okay to kink shame, but I would encourage this person to continue being the one who's leading in better communication. And that's not to say your partner is wrong or bad, but you are leading in healthier communication, and continue to lead by saying to your partner something along the lines, and I would not do it in the moment, but this is later when you're feeling connected, to say, I felt really hurt by your response when I shared my fantasy or my fetish with you, my kink with you the other day, because it really made me feel like ashamed or like something was wrong with me. And I don't know if that's what you meant by that, but that's how I've experienced that. And I would like to be able to have healthier communication around our fantasy so we can have a better sex life, right? Yeah. So, and then see what your partner says, because maybe they're not even aware that they kink shamed you. Maybe you are helping them learn that you felt shame, right? On that. So continue to lead on good communication, I would say, even if it feels vulnerable or hard.
Yeah, 100%. And I think oftentimes when people shame you, they are projecting something about themselves that there's missing. There's a hole in them. There's something, because I was shamed a little bit one time for trying sex toys. And I was like, but the part of the issue was, I think I was trying sex toys because I thought the sex needed to be improved or better. And I didn't communicate that well. I did a very poor job of that. But then I also felt like I was made to believe that, like, if I was trying a toy or something, maybe something's a little off about me. Why don't you just have normal sex? Do you need sex toys? What is that? And so be careful that, when somebody's saying that to you, what are they actually saying? They're hurting your feelings, but also there might be something missing with them. Absolutely. Or like you said, there potentially some trauma. There could be something. Totally. People hurt people. I know it's cliche to say, but
no, it's true.
People
who shame,
it's
true.
People who shame have been shamed, and they don't feel enough, or they feel inadequate. They think, oh, you need something more than me to get off or something. And that's not what this is. Exploring fantasies, exploring role play, exploring kinks is a way to grow together, not apart.
Absolutely. Right. And back to that, like, it's this created a chasm in your relationship where it could have created, and hopefully will in the future, create a connection. Right. Yeah. So to your point, when people respond with a really strong response, often it's a trauma response to that person. So again, when you bring it back up to your partner, you could say, you had a really strong response to that, and I'm actually like curious to know like what that's about for you, because maybe they did have a trauma response to it, and then instead of having this chasm between the two of you actually get to find out about them and some maybe trauma history or some experienced trauma, and they get to understand you and like why you find that erotic and sexy, and it's a really like it's deeper communication, which is intimacy, right?
Yep, 100%. All right, folks. Please send in your listener questions. We sure do appreciate it, because you can send them into Stormy at lovedeeplab.com. You can send them into me at Toby at marriagesupply.com. And actually right now, Stormy, you got a free sex drive building guide that you're giving away. Tell folks about that.
Just from our personal development series, we have a 12-part series, and you can on lovedeeperlab.com, you can see the whole series. But they're interactive guides, and there's 6 sexy topics, 6 personal transformation topics, and sex drive is one of the 12 topics. And we're just giving that away for free. So shoot me an email, put that in the subject line. I will send you the link to get the guide. But the guide is interactive journaling. It is also meditation. And yes, meditation helps with sex drive, and then also a video, and then some podcast clips and such. But so you can shoot me an email on that. And I will send you that, and then you can check out the whole series.
Very cool. And as always, you get 10% off. Use at Marriage Supplies. I say it's the #1 sex toy company in the world.
Awesome.
I might be biased, but use code SEX101. You get 10% off. And follow Dr. Stormy at DocStormy1. On Instagram and her TikTok, which is so awesome. It's how I found you. I was just dying laughing and learning at the same time at your TikToks. Touchy subjects with 3 S's at the end. And then Marriage Supplies on Instagram too at the.marriage.supply. And remember, folks, knowledge is power. Sex is power.
And the world needs a lot more of both.